I've had a lot of weird shit happen to me in my life, but this was downright the most frightening thing that has ever happened to me. I will try to be as descriptive as possible. As a backstory, I live in Miami, Florida with my boyfriend. However, I grew up in Naples, Collier County to be exact, and that's where the rest of my family lives. We go there for major holidays and birthdays to visit. So last Thanksgiving we decided we would take our then 2-month-old daughter with us on our trip so my family could see her. We left around 12:30 p.m. to head there, which would put us there about 2:30 depending on traffic. We figured we would leave before 8 p.m. We were new parents and that was the first time we had ever driven anywhere far with her. Well, one thing leads to another and we end up staying way past 8 and we instead leave somewhere between 11 and 11:30 p.m. The only positive about leaving this late is that there would be no traffic and Alligator Alley would be pretty much empty. The negatives are that there are literally no lights for most of the drive and you can't see what isn't beyond your headlights. So, if you broke down, it would be pretty terrifying in the pitch black in the middle of the swamp. That is always my fear when I make that drive. My family told us we could crash there, but we didn't have anything for overnight, and the drive should be less than 2 hours since there isn't any traffic. So we put our daughter in the car seat, dreading the drive back, and thankfully she passes out instantly. My boyfriend is driving, and we're about 30 to 45 minutes in, and he looks at me and says, "Babe, I'm really tired. Do you think you could take over?" My boyfriend hates my driving, so I know he wouldn't ask me to drive unless he was really tired. Plus, he drove on the way there, so I didn't mind at all. I told him to pull over at the next rest area and I would take the wheel. So he keeps driving, waiting for a rest area sign, and as we're driving, I'm talking to him to keep him awake. We end up seeing a sign that says rest area ahead, so he's going to pull into that once we get there. Well, as we're talking, our daughter wakes up and we hear her cooing and making different noises in the back seat. Then the next thing you know, she rips one and takes a big wet shit. I mean, you could really hear it. Then she starts crying hysterically. So we're both like, great, now we have to change her. But it wasn't really a big deal because we're pulling up to the rest stop anyway. It would just take a little longer. Now, to paint a picture for you, it wasn't a rest stop that had buildings with bathrooms and vending machines. There's a lot of them like that out there. This was basically just a long parking lot with one row of empty parking spaces, which basically just loop back onto the road. Really simple, nothing much to it. The parking spaces face out to the woods or swamp. The only thing separating the woods from the parking spaces was a tall metal fence that stretched only to the end of the parking spaces. So he pulls into the last parking spot just before the fence ends, and we both get out, leaving the car headlights on. He goes to the passenger side, and I go to the back seat to change the baby. I take her out of the car seat and sit in the back changing her diaper. Meanwhile, she is still screaming at the top of her lungs. I finally finish changing and getting her to calm down, and I walk her around the car back to her car seat. Her car seat is in the passenger side, behind where my boyfriend is now sitting. So I'm crouching over, buckling her in, and I hear my boyfriend in a really confused voice go, "What in the fuck is that? Babe, get in the fucking car now." He's literally the hardest person to scare, so I hear this in his voice. That way got my attention. So I stand straight up from my crouching position and look in front of us. My heart literally sank into my ass. There is a big fat clown on the other side of the fence where my headlights are shining. The top of his head looked bald and he had bright red hair sticking out on sides of his head. He had a really creepy face paint on. He even had a red clown nose. And it looked like there was something splattered across his costume. He was standing there silently, his face pressed up against the fence to the point where his skin was seeping through the holes and he was smiling the creepiest fucking smile I have ever seen in my life. Sheer terror came over me and I yell out something along the lines of, "Holy shit," and slam my daughter's side door. I run around the back of my car, my heart racing a mile a minute. The clown lets out the creepiest laugh I have ever heard and he starts shaking the fence violently and then starts walking toward the end of the fence slowly like he was going to come around. As he is walking, he starts singing "Rockabye Baby" while gliding his fingers across the fence. The way his voice sounded while he was singing, it was so chilling. I can't describe it. It was a really low-tone, shaky, psychotic clown voice. I'm assuming he sang it because he heard my daughter crying, but who knows? I jump into the driver's side after what feels like forever, even though the whole thing probably lasted 15 seconds, and lock all the doors. I'm literally shaking throughout my body, running on pure adrenaline. My boyfriend is in my ear saying, what the fuck, let's get the fuck out of here. The clown is now on our side of the fence, right in front of us. As I throw the car in reverse, he starts beating his hands on the hood of my car now, screaming something I couldn't make out because I was in pure nope mode. My boyfriend is even yelling, if it gets in front of the car, just run it over. So I was fully prepared to do so, but he didn't. I sped out of there like a bat out of hell. I look in my rearview mirror and the creepy ass clown is just standing there in the middle of the rest area, waving us off. We got onto the main road and I was driving faster than I had ever driven in my life. We were so stunned and traumatized by the whole ordeal that we could manage to get out what just happened for the remainder of the ride. We still speculate what he was doing out there at 12 a.m. dressed like a clown in the middle of the Everglades on a Thanksgiving night. We considered he was trying to fuck with people, but you would need some serious balls to pull that kind of stunt out there in the Everglades. People that live around there don't mess around. I truly believe that in the way he was singing and screaming that he was absolutely out of his mind. I don't have any other explanation. It gives us goosebumps to this day, almost a year later, trying to answer the question of what his intentions were, and what terrifies me the most and gives me the chills even now as I'm typing this is the fact that we were parked there for at least 10 minutes while I was in the backseat changing my 2-month-old, being watched by some psycho dressed as a clown. I always wonder how long he was watching. The world is full of crazy people. Living in Miami I really thought I had seen it all, but I was wrong. Needless to say, this Thanksgiving we're staying home. If you have seen the news lately, there have been reports of clowns luring children into the forest. I was one of the first to experience this happen. It was utterly terrifying. I want to remain anonymous at the moment just in case the clown finds out who I am. Anyways, here's what happened. I'm 14 years old and live in a small town in South Carolina. The town has a population of around 130 people. Summer was just about over and I had a summer job working at the local lumberyard. It was a great place to work. I helped customers load lumber into their vehicles, a pretty mindless job, and I was able to stay physically fit. The best part is that my house is exactly 1 mile away. Walking to and from work is a daily occurrence. I just spent a long day hauling and moving lumber, and my day was pretty much complete. It was about 9:30 p.m. when I started my walk home. The moon was just starting to light up the road and the sun had completely set below the hills. There are no other houses between the lumberyard and my house. Our town is very rural. The road home has hills that peak high enough that you are unable to see what's on the other side until you crest it. The road is skinny with no shoulder, but it's freshly paved. The trees stack one by one behind each other in a row, and vegetation is thick with a few game trails coming out to the road. Crickets and frogs sound like an orchestra, and the walk home usually takes about 30 minutes. I have done it so many times that I entertain myself with music. I put in my earbuds, throw on some tunes, and away I went. I was about halfway home when I hear what sounds like a high-pitched cackling laugh. "What the hell was that?" I said to myself out loud. I took out my earbuds and stopped. I thought it was part of the music, but something about it did not fit into the song. I stood there motionless, looking to hear the same sound again. The frogs croaking were so loud that not even a scream could be heard. I thought nothing of it and walked home. The next day I started my shift at 2 p.m. I started my walk to work around 1:30. Nothing was out of the ordinary. It was a beautiful day. I usually look down at my feet and kick any rocks that I see. Having them skip across the fresh pavement was oddly satisfying. I kicked a rock and it skipped across the pavement and landed next to something strange. Lying in the dirt, on the side of the road. It looked like a bright red ball. I picked it up and gave it a little pressure and it squeaked. Immediately I knew what it was. "This is a clown nose," I said to myself. "What the hell is it doing out here?" I kept it and carried it to work to show the other staff members. I even put it on and gave it some honks. It got a few laughs. The day went on as usual, and around 9:30 p.m. I clocked out, beginning my long walk home. I forgot my earbuds at home, so I was unable to listen to any music. While on my way home, I was able to make out a faint image of a figure about 150 yards away of what looked like a deer standing in the middle of the road. It was hard to make out as the fog hovered on the ground and the moonlight backlit the animal. As I got within 100 yards, it must have gotten spooked. I could see a rough outline scamper back into the forest. Little did I know this was not a deer, it was something more sadistic. I passed the spot in which the deer took off back into the woods. As I walked by, I heard footsteps about 20 yards behind me. I thought this was strange, as I have never seen a deer come back out into the road once it was scared off. Before I could look back, I heard, "Hey there." I turned my head to see a clown standing in the middle of the road with his hands behind his back. He wore baggy pants and a baggy shirt that was obviously a clown costume, but was very dirty, so dirty the colors had faded into stains. His makeup ran down his face and his eyes were black. He tilted his head to one side and said, "You have something of mine, I need it back." He gave me a small little laugh after he spoke. I don't have anything of yours," I said as I started to walk backwards. My house was still a quarter mile away. This is when the situation went from odd to terrifying. He said, "Well then, if you don't have my nose, I'm gonna need yours." He pulls out 2 machetes from behind his back and clicked them together. "Run," he yelled, as I turned around and with all my might I take off running down the middle of the road. I can hear his feet running. I didn't look back as it could slow me down. The blades of his machetes drug on the asphalt. I was in great shape, but I could hear his footsteps getting louder, signaling he was getting closer to me. He would even let a little giggle that would fuel my adrenaline even more. My lungs started to burn. I began to crest the hill. At this moment, I can hear him almost right behind me, just about touching me. Out of nowhere, a truck crests the hill with his headlights shining on me. I wave my arms in sheer panic. He stops. I quickly look behind me to see nothing. No clown. I tell the man in the truck what had happened, and he calls the police. I will never make that walk again. I have no idea how the clown got to that location and why he waited for me. I have never seen any vehicles parked, nor are there any houses for miles. This has been my worst nightmare that came true. Now I have found out that this is happening to more people. Clowns hiding in the woods. Is this a cult? A group of scary clowns with the goal to terrify people? I have no idea, but I do know that I am never able to walk in the dark or see clowns the same. Please people, stay safe out there and be aware of your surroundings while walking alone in the dark. I make a big deal about clowns on my websites, and this is why. One night around 7 p.m. when I was walking home from our ice arena, I noticed a light tan-colored van with strange objects in the windows just sitting there on the side of the road. As I walked closer, getting ready to cross the street before passing the eerie vehicle, I realized the objects were just balloons. A little curious, I stepped closer to see what all of the balloons were about, and suddenly, from inside the van, in between all of the balloons, a clown popped his head out and smiled. He didn't say anything, he just sat there, staring, grinning. I stepped off the curb and walked a little faster. It was dark by then, my figure skating lessons ended at 5:30, and I stayed for some hot chocolate. We lived so close that we never thought anything about me walking home. Normally there were no incidents. Tonight was different. As I walked faster, I heard a car honking. I turned to see that the van driving on the other side of the road, just behind me. A car was trying to pass it, but the big, creepy van was in the way. It pulled over and waved the car to move around him. I looked ahead and started walking faster while noticing the honking car speeding on by. As I was just finishing up figure skating lessons, I had my skates hanging over my shoulders by the laces. I took off the skate guard of one of the skates and looked at the reflection in the blade. The van was still on the other side of the road, driving slowly behind me. I turned the corner into the condos that we lived in and treaded my way around the inside of the complex. I noticed that he had turned into the gated community when another car had pulled in. I slipped into one of the carports and hid behind a large station wagon as my apartment was way across the lawn. There he was, driving slowly and scoping out each carport. I was terrified. Between each set of condos was a grassy area with nowhere to hide. I was stuck here behind this car until he left. But how would I know if he left? I then heard a car pull up to the side of the carport. The driver had parked and idled. I checked all of the walls around me and the car, wondering how he could have possibly found me. Then I noticed the rubber guard for my skate blade was no longer in my pocket. I peeked out around the station wagon, and there it was, sitting there out in the open behind the station wagon. I heard footsteps creep up to the carport, and I crouched lower behind the car and its wheel.
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. I have some candy, some treats.
I heard a bag shake.
I won't hurt you.
I covered my mouth to stop a scream and waited. The footsteps came closer.
Kitty, kitty, kitty. Come out and purr for me.
I pulled my skates from over my shoulder and took off my backpack. There was no way I'd make it out of here with the backpack. The creepy clown would probably grab it and pull me back. I got ready to jump and run as the footsteps came closer.
Kitty, kitty,
he hissed. I jumped and swung my skates around my head by the laces. He fell backwards as the pick from my figure skate slammed into his forehead. I ran so fast and hard that I knew if I fell I would impale myself with my blades. I wouldn't let go of them though. They became weapons for me. My safety, my defense. I zigzagged through the buildings, and once I arrived home, I turned off all the lights and double-locked the door. Mom wasn't due home from work for another hour. Back then, we didn't have cell phones or cordless phones, and our phone was hanging on the wall. I didn't dare get up to use the phone, so I waited. It was a good thing that I did, because I heard the footsteps in the same creepy kitty, kitty, kitty outside the door and then down the street. When Mom got home, we called the cops together, but no one ever found the clown, nor did I ever see him again.